The chandelier inside the Beverly Hills Hotel's crystal ballroom shimmered like a sky full of diamonds, catching every whisper, every flash of a camera, every breath of the wealthy guests who gathered to celebrate Beckett Harrington's newest billion-dollar acquisition. Servers in crisp white jackets glided between marble columns, balancing trays of champagne flutes. A live string quartet played a gentle overture, filling the gold-trimmed hall with a soft elegance that belonged to the richest corners of America. And at the center of it all stood Beckett, sharp suit, polished shoes, smile carved to perfection. But his most prized accessory tonight wasn't the contract he closed. It was Savannah Price, his stunning 27-year-old communications director, whose hand rested boldly on his chest as though she already owned him. The room buzzed. Is that really her? They're not even hiding it anymore. What about his wife? Isn't she 8 months pregnant? But Beckett didn't care. He soaked in the attention like a man who believed nothing, not morality, not marriage, not consequences, could ever touch him. At the edge of the ballroom, behind a column that reflected the golden lights, stood Lydia Monroe Harrington. 8 months pregnant, breath shallow, one hand against her belly, the other clutching the strap of her modest black evening dress. She had never looked smaller, never felt more invisible. She hadn't been invited. But she came anyway, not to beg, not to confront, not even to cry. She came because this was the night Beckett planned to humiliate her publicly, just as he had been doing privately for months. He had told her that she shouldn't bother showing up, that she was too fragile, too emotional, too irrelevant to be part of his new chapter. A chapter he now chose to announce with Savannah standing proudly beside him. A microphone clicked. The quartet faded. The lights shifted. Beckett walked onto the stage, Savannah at his side, the image of a perfect power couple sculpted for headlines. He took Savannah's hand as though the cameras were hungry wolves meant to feed on the scandal. "Ladies and gentlemen," Beckett began, voice smooth as the champagne he adored. "Tonight marks a new era for Harrington Apex, a stronger era, a braver era, an era built with the woman who has brought incredible light into my life." He turned to Savannah and kissed her. Gasps rippled through the ballroom like a shockwave. Flashbulbs exploded. Savannah smiled sweetly, pretending to blush. Beckett wrapped an arm around her waist as if Lydia had never existed at all. Lydia swallowed hard. The baby kicked. The world spun for a moment, but her eyes didn't water. She reached into her purse and touched the envelope inside, the one containing the signatures she had collected, the one that finalized a financial move Beckett still didn't know about, the one that would make tonight the greatest mistake of his life. Then Beckett's voice boomed through the room once more. "And now," he said, lifting his glass, "to new beginnings, without dead weight holding me back." The guests froze. Lydia stepped out from behind the column, and Beckett's smile vanished, because his downfall had just walked into the light. And she wasn't alone tonight. Lydia Monroe Harrington had once been the kind of woman people underestimated without even realizing it. Soft-spoken, sharp-minded. A forensic accountant who could dismantle a multi-million-dollar financial fraud using nothing but a laptop and a cup of lukewarm Starbucks. Before Beckett swept her into his glittering world of private jets and Park Avenue penthouses, Lydia's life had been quiet, but steady, honest, and built on her own merit. Growing up in a modest neighborhood outside Portland, she was the girl who spent afternoons buried in books at Barnes & Noble, while other teenagers gossiped at the mall. Her father died young. Her mother worked 2 jobs. Lydia learned early that survival meant discipline, not dreams. By 25, she was the youngest auditor at a top Manhattan firm, the kind whose clients feared her ability to see the truth hiding in the numbers. Then Beckett Harrington walked into her life, He had come to her office in a tailored navy suit, dripping charm and confidence, holding a Mont Blanc pen and a smile that felt like a spotlight. He praised her intelligence, admired her work, told her she was wasted behind a desk. For the first time in years, someone made Lydia feel seen, not for her usefulness, but for her potential. At least that was the illusion. Their romance was a whirlwind. Dinners along the Manhattan skyline, weekend trips to Napa Valley, late-night confessions about the futures they wanted. Beckett treated her as if she were irreplaceable, until the day she became pregnant. That was when everything began to shift, quietly at first, like a draft under a closed door. "Take a break from work," he said after she told him the news. "You shouldn't stress the baby with late nights at the office. I can provide for both of you. Isn't that what a man is supposed to do?" Lydia thought it was love. She didn't realize it was isolation. Within months, Beckett controlled everything. Her schedule, her finances, even the doctor she was allowed to see. He said it was protection. She believed him. But the walls closed in slowly, room by room, until her world became a penthouse with windows that showed Manhattan, but never let her touch it. And yet, Lydia never lost her instincts. Every night after Beckett fell asleep, she opened her old MacBook and studied the documents he left lying around. Investment memos, tax drafts, offshore transfers. The patterns didn't match. The numbers lied. She filed the inconsistencies away, quietly, like a squirrel storing winter food. She didn't know why she was doing it. She only knew Beckett had changed. Savannah's perfume lingering on his shirts. Board members whispering when she entered rooms. Her calls ignored, her presence dismissed. And worst of all, the way Beckett looked at her belly as if the child growing inside her was an inconvenience, not a miracle. Tonight, in the ballroom, Lydia looked smaller than ever. But that was the mistake everyone made with her. She might have come from modest beginnings, she might be trembling, she might be alone, but she was not powerless. And soon, the world would learn exactly what a woman like Lydia could do when pushed past her breaking point. Manhattan had a way of swallowing people whole, especially those who didn't arrive with sharp elbows, deep pockets, or the kind of arrogance that acted like armor. Harrington Apex Capital occupied the top floors of a glass tower overlooking Wall Street, a structure so tall it almost pierced the clouds. By day, the building shimmered like a blade. By night, it became a lighthouse for men like Beckett who believed the world belonged to them. Inside, everything was engineered for intimidation. Marble floors, chrome accents, and conference rooms lined with screens displaying tickers, market shifts, and acquisition targets. Assistants moved briskly with iPads tucked against tailored suits, while executives discussed billion-dollar strategies over espresso poured from a machine that cost more than most cars. This was Beckett Harrington's kingdom, and it was a kingdom built on secrecy. For Lydia, the building had once been a place of admiration. She used to bring lunch to Beckett when they were newly married, proud to stand beside him during late-night meetings, proud of the empire she believed they were building together. The receptionists used to greet her warmly, offering a latte or a seat in the panoramic lounge where she could watch the skyline shimmer. That was before pregnancy, before Savannah, before Lydia learned there were parts of Beckett's life she was never meant to see. Now, when she walked through the lobby, the staff avoided eye contact. Her security badge, once coded for unrestricted access, had been deactivated for her safety. She could no longer step foot onto the trading floor. Beckett claimed the environment was too stressful for someone in her delicate condition. But the truth was simpler. He didn't want her seeing anything she shouldn't. Meanwhile, their penthouse on Park Avenue, once warm, filled with late-night laughter and takeout boxes, had transformed into a cold museum of curated luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the Manhattan skyline like a painting, while imported sculptures and designer furniture created an aesthetic so glossy that Lydia often felt she lived inside a catalog rather than a home. At night, she wandered the silent halls barefoot, touching the marble counters, the unused kitchen equipment, the glossy dining table where Beckett rarely appeared. The baby's nursery sat half-finished. Beckett had postponed choosing the crib 3 times, claiming work came first. Lydia eventually bought a simple one herself, assembling it alone at midnight, while outside, the city glowed in indifferent beauty. Her world kept shrinking, while Beckett's expanded. He traveled more often. Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, each trip accompanied suspiciously by Savannah, who was always handling communications. The tabloids caught on quickly, publishing photos of them at upscale restaurants and charity events. Beckett dismissed the articles as clickbait, but Lydia saw more truth in the grainy paparazzi photos than in anything he said at home. Yet Manhattan, in all its harshness, awakened something inside her. Walking past Fifth Avenue lights, past crowds rushing with purpose, Lydia remembered who she used to be. The city whispered a truth she had tried to forget. She didn't come here to disappear. She came here to matter. And soon, this glittering world Beckett built would become the stage where everything he hid would collapse, brick by brick, secret by secret. Because Manhattan had consumed many men like him, and it was almost his turn. Beckett Harrington wasn't born powerful. He built his empire brick by brick, lie by lie, ambition by ambition. In New York's financial circles, he was known as the man who never loses, a CEO with an uncanny instinct for acquisitions and a reputation for crushing competitors without blinking. His name echoed across Wall Street like a warning siren. Brilliant, ruthless, unstoppable. On the surface, he carried himself like the perfect American success story. A tailored charcoal suit, a Rolex he didn't check for time, only for status, a Mercedes Maybach waiting at every curb. But beneath the polish was a man carved from insecurity and hunger, a man who feared irrelevance more than jail, a man who believed the world owed him everything. He had mastered the art of manipulation long before he mastered finance. To investors, he was charismatic. To employees, he was intimidating. To journalists, he was untouchable. And to Lydia, he was first a dream, then a husband, and finally, a captor wearing a wedding ring. The changes in him came slowly, then all at once. It started with offhand comments. "You don't understand what pressure really is. Leave the finances to people who actually work. It's cute that you think you could help at the office." Then it shifted to control disguised as concern. "You shouldn't drive alone. You don't need to check the statements. You're pregnant, Lydia. Stop thinking so much." The Beckett she met years ago had praised her mind. The Beckett she lived with now saw that mind as a threat, because Lydia noticed things. Things she wasn't supposed to see. Transfers, shell companies, undeclared assets, paper trails that whispered fraud, concealment, risk, and Beckett knew it. That was when Savannah Price entered the picture. Publicly, she was his communications director, a brilliant, polished strategist with sharp heels and sharper intuition. Privately, the tabloids painted her as his new obsession. The truth was far more dangerous. Savannah had access to emails, crisis plans, internal memos, and Beckett used her as a shield, a distraction, a trophy. He flaunted Savannah at galas, on business trips, in front of board members, while Lydia watched her marriage deteriorate like an old painting fading under harsh light. But Beckett underestimated one thing. Lydia wasn't just a wife. She was a forensic accountant. She saw what others ignored. And in Beckett's world, knowledge was the deadliest weapon. Still, his arrogance grew. He believed Savannah adored him. He believed the board would always protect him. He believed Lydia was too fragile, too emotional, too loyal to ever fight back. He believed he was untouchable. But Beckett Harrington's fatal flaw wasn't his greed. It wasn't his lies. It wasn't even his infidelity. It was this. He never once considered that the quiet woman he dismissed, the one carrying his child, might be the very person capable of bringing down everything he built. And she was closer to delivering justice than he ever imagined. Much closer. It happened so fast that even Lydia, who had rehearsed every worst-case scenario in her mind, wasn't prepared for how brutal the moment would truly feel. Beckett's glass clinked against the microphone, sending a sharp ring through the Beverly Hills Hotel's crystal ballroom. The music softened. Conversations died. All eyes shifted to the stage where Beckett stood tall, confidence radiating off him like heat from a furnace. And right beside him, Savannah Price. She was flawless tonight, wrapped in a champagne-colored gown that shimmered with every breath she took. Her hair fell in soft waves, her hand resting lightly on Beckett's arm, her lips curved in a smile that had been rehearsed for cameras and boardrooms alike. "Ladies and gentlemen," Beckett announced, "thank you for joining us to celebrate the most significant victory Harrington Apex has ever achieved." Applause thundered through the ballroom. Lydia remained still. Her heartbeat didn't. Beckett continued, his voice sliding into the space like a blade coated in honey. "I've always believed success comes from surrounding yourself with the right people," he said. "People who elevate you, inspire you, push you toward greatness." He turned to Savannah with a soft intensity that made several guests whisper. "And this woman has done exactly that." Lydia's lungs tightened. She heard a woman nearby gasp. Someone else murmured, "Is his wife actually here?" Another voice whispered, "She looks so pale. Poor thing." But Beckett kept going, because cruelty, for him, was effortless. "For months," he said, "Savannah has been at my side for every deal, every challenge, every late-night crisis. And tonight I want to acknowledge her role in transforming this company into the powerhouse it is." Savannah lowered her eyes, pretending to blush. Beckett slipped an arm around her waist. The room erupted in clicking cameras. But he wasn't finished, not even close. He let out a laugh that felt like glass shattering. "Some people hold you back without realizing it," he said, his smile twisting. "Some people drain your energy. Some people," and here, for the first time, his eyes found Lydia, "aren't built for the demanding world the rest of us live in." A ripple of shock moved across the room. Lydia's throat burned, but she didn't look away. Beckett lifted his champagne flute. "So tonight, I'm choosing a future that reflects who I am and who I want beside me." Lydia felt every guest silently begging her not to collapse. But she stood tall. Then Beckett delivered the final blow. "To new beginnings," he said, raising Savannah's hand high, "and to removing anything or anyone that no longer fits." Gasps. Whispers. Someone dropped a fork. It was public. It was humiliating. It was intentional. But Beckett made one fatal mistake. He believed Lydia would break. Instead, she reached into her clutch and touched the folder containing the documents he didn't know she'd signed. And as the room continued buzzing around her, she lifted her chin and stepped forward. Because if Beckett wanted a spectacle, Lydia was ready to give him one. The moment Lydia stepped out of the glittering ballroom and into the dim hallway, the applause behind her faded into a dull, distant echo. The air felt heavier here, colder, quieter, the kind of silence that pressed against her ribs. She braced a hand against the wallpaper as another wave of dizziness swept through her. The humiliation still clung to her skin like frostbite. She had known Beckett would hurt her, but not like this, not with cameras watching. Not while she carried his child. Her heels clicked unevenly against the marble floor as she made her way toward a side exit. She wasn't crying, her body was too exhausted for tears, but her breathing came out shallow, shaky, as if each inhale fought through layers of betrayal. Outside, the night air slapped her cheeks with brutal honesty. Beverly Hills shimmered beyond the hotel entrance. Neon lights, polished cars, palm trees swaying in a breeze that didn't care about broken vows or shattered illusions. Lydia leaned against a stone pillar and pressed a hand to her belly. "I'm okay," she whispered to the baby. But the baby kicked harder than usual, as if sensing her distress. Her phone buzzed. Elias. She answered with trembling fingers. "Lyd?" His voice tightened instantly. "Where are you?" "I saw the live stream. Beckett actually brought that woman on stage." Lydia swallowed the lump in her throat. "He wanted everyone to see I'm replaceable." "Listen to me," Elias said firmly. "You are not going back in there. I'll send a car. Just sit somewhere safe." But Lydia wasn't sure what safe meant anymore. She wandered toward a quiet courtyard behind the hotel, where twinkle lights hung from olive trees and a fountain murmured softly. She sat on a bench and finally let her shoulders collapse forward. The folder in her purse, the one containing Beckett's downfall, pressed into her side like a reminder that she wasn't as powerless as she felt. Still, the pain hurt. The humiliation stung. The loneliness curled around her like a storm cloud. A couple walked past, laughing softly, still dressed for the gala. The woman glanced at Lydia, her eyes widening with recognition, sympathy, even pity. Lydia turned away quickly. She didn't want pity. She wanted strength, just enough to make it through this night. Another contraction-like ache pulsed low in her abdomen. Not dangerous, but sharp enough to make her grip the bench. "Not now," she whispered, closing her eyes. "Please, not tonight." Her phone buzzed again, this time with a familiar name she hadn't seen in months. Adrian Blake. A single message. "I heard what happened. Tell me where you are. I'm coming." Her breath caught. Adrian, the one person who used to see her brilliance before she forgot it existed. She typed back slowly, unsure if reaching out to him was weakness or survival. Before she could decide, a shadow appeared at the edge of the courtyard. Footsteps. Slow. Confident. Lydia's spine tensed. She looked up, and her heart froze, because the man stepping out of the shadows wasn't Adrian. It was Beckett, and he was smiling, a smile that promised the night wasn't done breaking her yet. Beckett stepped forward, his shadow stretching across the courtyard like something alive. Lydia gripped the bench to steady herself, every nerve in her body thrumming with alarm. He wasn't supposed to leave the ballroom, not while the cameras were still rolling, not while Savannah was glued to his side like a polished accessory. But here he was, calm, cold, dangerously composed. "Running away so soon?" he asked, voice silk over steel. Lydia swallowed hard. "I needed air." "You embarrassed me," he said, moving closer. Walking out like that, people noticed. She almost laughed, bitterly. He humiliated her, yet somehow she was the embarrassment. "Beckett, what you did tonight?" "What I did," he cut in sharply, "was show people the version of my life that works. You no longer fit that picture, Lydia. Not publicly, not privately." Her heartbeat stuttered. "I'm carrying your child." Beckett's expression didn't soften. If anything, his jaw tightened. "Yes, and once he's born, we'll figure out arrangements. Separate households, controlled schedules. You'll get whatever support is necessary, within reason." Within reason. As though she were a burden, not a wife. Then Beckett's gaze flicked to her purse, the one holding the trust documents, the prenup clauses, and the power he didn't know she possessed. His voice lowered. "Actually, that brings me to why I came out here." A chill slid through Lydia's spine. "I need you to sign something." He pulled a set of folded papers from his jacket. "Just a few clarifications for asset protection. Formally transferring certain holdings to me before the IPO. Standard practice. You'll sign it tonight." Lydia froze. This was the trap, the final move, the legal noose he'd been tightening for months. She steadied her voice. "Why would you need my signature now?" He stepped closer, too close. "Because there are things you aren't meant to understand. And because once the board sees Savannah as my partner, everything will shift. I need my assets secure. You will not sabotage that." Lydia felt something inside her ignite. Anger, fear, resolve. But then, a voice echoed from behind the hedges. "She's not signing a damn thing." Both turned. Elias Monroe emerged first, coat half-buttoned, eyes blazing. And beside him, unexpected, breath-stealing, stood Savannah Price. Lydia blinked in confusion. "Savannah?" Savannah held up her phone. The screen glowed with a SEC badge, official, undeniable. "I'm not his partner," Savannah said. "I'm his investigation." Beckett's face drained of color. Savannah continued, stepping toward Lydia, not Beckett. "For months I've been gathering evidence on Harrington Apex, but I couldn't touch the trust accounts. They belong to the spouse, you." Lydia's breath caught. Beckett lurched forward. "Savannah, don't do this." "Oh, I already have," she said. "And Lydia, you deserve the truth. You're not just his wife. You're the key witness." The courtyard fell silent. The humiliation, the suffering, the betrayal. They were no longer weaknesses. They were power, and Beckett knew it. His empire wasn't slipping away. It was already gone. Lydia had always been quiet, gentle, soft in the ways the world mistook for weakness. But the night Savannah revealed the truth, and Elias stood beside her like an unshakable shield, something inside Lydia shifted. Not suddenly, not violently, but with a quiet power, as if a door she never knew existed opened inside her chest. A door leading back to herself. The next morning, she stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror of her Park Avenue penthouse, the same mirror where she had once cried silently while Beckett left for another business dinner, the same mirror where she used to hold her pregnant belly and wonder why the man she married no longer looked at her with warmth. But today, she didn't see a broken woman. She saw a survivor sharpening into something stronger. Her hair, once tied back in loose, apologetic waves, fell sleek around her shoulders. Her face, usually bare, now carried a quiet fierceness, defined brows, soft blush, a shade of lipstick that made her look like she finally remembered she was someone worth fighting for. Elias sat at the dining table, a stack of folders open beside his laptop. "The trust is intact," he said without looking up. "And Savannah forwarded every document the SEC has on Beckett's offshore transfers. Your protected lid." Protected. A word she hadn't felt in months. But what she felt now wasn't just protection. It was purpose. "Good," Lydia said, smoothing her blazer. "Then it's time." Elias looked up, startled by the steel in her voice. "Time for what?" She slipped on her wedding rings one last time, not out of love, but symbolism, to show him that the woman he dismissed is the woman who will take everything he tried to steal. Later that afternoon, Lydia stepped into Harrington Apex Capital for the first time in nearly half a year. The building's rotating glass doors reflected the Manhattan skyline. Tall, brutal, breathtaking. As she walked through the lobby, heads turned. Employees whispered. A security guard nearly dropped his badge scanner. Because Lydia looked nothing like the fragile wife Beckett had pushed aside. She looked like the storm coming for him. Her heels echoed against the polished marble as she strode toward the executive elevator, the same elevator Beckett once forbid her from using, the same one Savannah had ridden countless times at his side. But today, the elevator belonged to Lydia. When the doors opened on the top floor, the senior staff froze. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Lydia crossed the room with quiet authority, her hand resting on the trust documents secured inside her bag. Mrs. Harrington, the head of compliance stammered. Do you need something? Yes, she said calmly. My husband. Before anyone could respond, Savannah appeared from Beckett's office. No longer wearing designer gowns, but a crisp black suit with her SEC badge clipped visibly on her lapel. She gave Lydia a nod of respect. Ready? Lydia inhaled slowly. More than ever. The two women walked into Beckett's office together. For the first time in his life, Beckett Harrington was about to face women he believed he owned, and learn he never owned them at all. Beckett Harrington was mid-sentence, mid-lie, really, when Lydia and Savannah stepped into his office. He didn't look up at first. He was too busy berating his legal team, barking orders while pacing behind his mahogany desk like a caged wolf. I don't care what the board thinks, he snapped. I want every asset shifted before the IPO. If Lydia refuses to sign, He froze. His eyes locked onto Lydia, her posture, her confidence, the blazer, the polished calm. Everything about her contradicted the fragile, trembling woman he humiliated the night before. What the hell are you doing here? He demanded. Lydia didn't answer. She simply placed a folder on his desk with a quiet finality that made even his attorneys step back. Savannah crossed her arms, SEC badge gleaming under the office lights. Go ahead, Beckett. Open it. Irritated, he yanked the folder open, then went silent. Inside was the trust certificate, the prenup excerpts, the notarized filings. Every document transferring his marital assets, his penthouse, his stocks, his liquid accounts, into Lydia's legal control. You signed this, Lydia said softly. 15 months after our wedding. You don't remember because you signed everything that benefited you without reading. Beckett's pulse visibly jumped in his neck. This is fake. It has to be. But Savannah leaned in, her voice razor-sharp. It's authentic, and federal investigators already have copies. His lawyers whispered urgently, but Beckett shoved them away. No, this is impossible. How could she? Lydia finally met his eyes. For months you underestimated me. You thought you could erase me, replace me, control me, but you forgot one thing, Beckett. She stepped closer, placing a hand on his desk, the same desk where he had planned to cut her out of her own life. You married a forensic accountant. A ripple of shock moved through the room. Savannah switched on the large conference screen. Dozens of emails, transfers, and offshore accounts appeared, each one tied to Beckett. This, Savannah announced, is the evidence Harrington Apex has been hiding, and as of this morning, the SEC, IRS, and Department of Justice have all issued coordinated subpoenas. Beckett's face drained of color. You set me up, he hissed at Savannah. She smirked. No, you set yourself up. I just documented it. He turned to Lydia. You can't do this. You need me. You wouldn't even survive without... I already have, Lydia said. The door opened. Half the board filed in, summoned by Savannah and Elias. Cameras from the internal PR team hovered behind them, recording every expression, every tremor in Beckett's voice. Beckett Harrington, the board chair said, effective immediately. You are removed as CEO pending federal investigation. His knees nearly buckled. And control of the company? He asked weakly. Lydia lifted the trust certificate. Mine! Gasps filled the room. Beckett lunged toward her, but security intercepted, gripping his arms just as federal agents swarmed the doorway. The cameras caught everything. The panic, the humiliation, the downfall of a man who thought he was untouchable. As Beckett was escorted out, Lydia stood perfectly still, strong, steady, unshaken. And for the first time, the entire world saw who truly held the power. The morning after Beckett Harrington's empire collapsed, Manhattan felt strangely quiet. The skyline was the same. Sleek towers, busy streets, the low hum of ambition pulsing through the air. But for Lydia, everything looked different, clearer, brighter. as if the city she once felt trapped inside had finally opened its arms to her. She stood on the balcony of her Park Avenue penthouse, now legally hers, watching sunlight spill across the concrete canyons below. Her hand rested gently on her belly. The baby kicked, softer this time, almost peaceful. "You did it," she whispered. "We're safe now." Behind her, the sliding door opened. Elias stepped outside with 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one, his expression softening with the kind of pride only an older brother could hold. "Ready for the board announcement?" he asked. Lydia nodded. Today, she would step into the Harrington Apex headquarters not as someone's wife, but as the sole owner and acting chairwoman. Cameras would wait. Reporters would shout her name. Investors would demand answers. But she wasn't afraid. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of anything. She turned to Elias. "I'm not doing this for revenge anymore," she said quietly. "I'm doing it because my child deserves a mother who stands tall." Elias smiled. "You've always stood tall. You just forgot for a while." They left together. Downstairs, a black SUV waited, not Beckett's Maybach, but a simple, elegant car arranged by someone else, someone unexpected. Adrian. He stepped out as Lydia approached, adjusting the sleeves of his navy suit. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic declaration, just a warm smile that reached his eyes. "I heard you have a boardroom to conquer," he said. Lydia felt her chest tighten, but this time in a gentle way, like a wound beginning to heal. "I do." He opened the door for her. "Then let me drive you. Not because you need the help, but because you deserve people who show up." It was such a simple sentence, but after months of being ignored, dismissed, diminished, it felt monumental. As they drove toward the Harrington Apex Tower, reporters lined the sidewalks. Cameras flashed. Headlines scrolled across digital billboards. "Lydia Monroe Harrington takes control of Empire." "Beckett Harrington faces federal charges." "From humiliation to power, the wife who outplayed a billionaire." Inside the elevator, Lydia touched the smooth steel wall, grounding herself. Adrian watched her quietly. "Whatever happens today," he said, "you've already won." The doors opened. The boardroom, once Beckett's arena, fell silent when she entered. Executives rose to their feet, not out of fear, out of respect. Lydia took her seat at the head of the table. "This company," she began, voice steady, "will no longer be built on greed or intimidation. We move forward with transparency, integrity, and humanity." Applause broke out. Later, as she stepped back onto the sidewalk, the winter sun warming her cheeks, Adrian walked beside her. "You look lighter," he said. "I feel free," she breathed. And with the city glowing around her, Lydia realized something profound. She hadn't just survived. She had risen. And the world would never underestimate her again. In the days following Beckett's arrest, Manhattan buzzed with a strange mixture of fascination and disbelief. News vans lined the blocks near the Harrington Apex Tower. Financial journalists dissected every frame of the footage showing Beckett being escorted out, his face twisted in rage, his wrists locked in steel. Social media had crowned him the newest symbol of corporate downfall. But Lydia? Lydia had become something else entirely, a symbol of quiet resilience standing taller than the men who tried to break her. Yet even with the world praising her strength, the emotional debris of the past year lay scattered inside her like broken glass. Strength didn't erase wounds, it only made you brave enough to look at them. 3 days after the board meeting, she woke before sunrise. For a moment, she didn't move. The penthouse, hers now, felt strangely peaceful, silent, except for the faint hum of the city waking below. She sat up slowly, rubbing her lower back, her belly heavy but reassuring. The baby kicked. A small, gentle reminder that her life was no longer defined by Beckett's shadow. She made her way to the kitchen, where she found Elias already there, reading legal briefs while eating a cold bagel. "You should sleep," Lydia murmured. He looked up, eyes softening. "So should you." She smiled faintly. But exhaustion wasn't what kept her awake. It was the realization that life after survival is its own kind of uncertainty. Freedom can feel overwhelming when you've been caged for so long. Elias closed his laptop. "There's something we need to discuss." She braced. "What now?" He slid a document toward her. "Beckett's legal team is trying to petition for limited contact once the baby is born." A cold knot tightened in her stomach. Elias continued. "But given the federal charges, the fraud, the financial abuse, and the public humiliation, the court will likely side with you. You'll have full custody unless something drastically changes." Lydia exhaled, relief and sadness mixing into something complicated. "He's still the father," she whispered. "Yes," Elias said gently, "but not a good one." Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "Are you free this morning?" Her pulse fluttered, not from romance, but from something softer, something unfamiliar. Safety, maybe, or possibility. Elias noticed the way her expression changed. "You should go," he said. "You deserve moments that aren't about survival." Lydia hesitated. "It feels too early." Lyd, rebuilding isn't betrayal. The words landed deeper than she expected. Later that morning, she met Adrian at a small cafe near Central Park. He was seated outside, coat dusted with winter sunlight, 2 warm drinks on the table. He stood when she approached, genuine worry etched on his face. "How are you?" he asked. For once, she didn't pretend. "Tired," she admitted, "but alive." He smiled gently. "Alive looks good on you." Lydia sat, feeling the warmth of the cup seep into her palms. For a moment, neither spoke. The world moved around them, joggers, dogs, taxis. But here, in this small corner of Manhattan, life felt almost normal. And Lydia realized something. Survival wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of her becoming. For the first time in months, Lydia allowed herself to sit somewhere without fear. No cameras, no lawyers, no threats disguised as affection. Just a quiet cafe overlooking Central Park and the steady presence of someone who didn't want anything from her except the truth. Adrian watched her carefully, as if he could sense the storm brewing behind her calm expression. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said softly. Lydia traced a finger along the edge of her cup. Steam curled into the crisp morning air. "I'm not pretending," she whispered. "I'm just trying to understand what comes next." "Whatever it is," Adrian replied, "you won't be facing it alone." The words almost undid her, not because they were romantic, though there was warmth there, undeniable and gentle, but because it had been so long since someone offered support without expecting control in return. Before she could respond, a wave of discomfort rippled across her abdomen, not sharp, but tight, like a reminder that her body was carrying more than emotional weight. Adrian noticed immediately. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she lied. "Just stress." A taxi honked nearby. A gust of cold air swept across the table. Lydia shut her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. She thought she had already faced the hardest part, Beckett's betrayal, the public humiliation, the unraveling of her marriage. But sitting here, with someone who genuinely cared, she felt something unexpected. Grief. Not for Beckett, not for the marriage, but for the version of herself she lost somewhere along the way. She opened her eyes again. "I don't know who I am without the survival mode," she confessed. Adrian leaned forward. "Then let this be the chapter where you find out." Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. Again. This time, not with support, but with consequences. A message from her attorney. Beckett is petitioning for an emergency hearing. Claims you are mentally unstable and unfit due to emotional volatility. Her throat tightened. Another message came instantly. He is requesting temporary custody once the baby is born. Lydia's blood ran cold. Adrian saw her expression change. What happened? She handed him the phone with shaking fingers. Adrian's jaw hardened. He's desperate and dangerous. No, Lydia whispered, panic creeping in. He can't take my baby. He can't do this to me. Adrian reached across the table, covering her trembling hands with his. Listen to me. He has no case. Elias won't let this stand, and neither will the courts. But Lydia wasn't listening. The cafe blurred. The city noise faded. Her breath turned shallow. Because Beckett's cruelty she could handle. His betrayal she could rise from. But losing her child, that was a pain she could not survive. A sudden, sharper contraction made her gasp. Lydia? Adrian stood quickly. We need to get you to the hospital. She nodded, breath breaking. Call Elias. Adrian helped her to her feet, guiding her toward the street, his arms steady around her back. But as they reached the curb, a black sedan rolled to a stop. The back window lowered, and Beckett's voice drifted out, smooth, venomous, controlled. Going somewhere, Lydia? And in that moment she realized the real battle hadn't even begun. The black sedan idled at the curb, its tinted window lowered just enough for Lydia to see Beckett's eyes. Cold, calculating, burning with the fury of a man watching his world collapse. Adrian moved instinctively, stepping between Lydia and the car, shielding her with a protectiveness Beckett had never once shown. You shouldn't be here, Adrian said sharply. Beckett ignored him, his gaze locked onto Lydia, dissecting her, searching for cracks in her armor. You look unwell, he said coolly. Stress isn't good for the baby. Maybe you should come with me. Lydia steadied her breath. I'm not going anywhere with you. Beckett's jaw flexed. If you think you can keep my child from me, Adrian cut him off. She isn't discussing custody on a sidewalk. Beckett laughed, a low, chilling sound. Custody? Adrian, this isn't about custody. It's about responsibility. Lydia's been unstable for months, emotional, paranoid. I've told the court everything. Lydia felt as if the ground shifted beneath her. That's a lie, she whispered. It's concern, Beckett corrected, shrugging casually. Judges listen to fathers who show concern. And in your condition, you're one panic attack away from giving them exactly what they need. Adrian stepped closer to the car, voice like ice. Leave, now. But Beckett leaned slightly forward, eyes never leaving Lydia. You know, I always admired your loyalty, he said. Even when you were useless to me. But tonight, filing emergency motions without legal grounds? Running around with a man who's been in love with you for years? His smirk deepened. Makes you look unstable. Lydia's pulse hammered. He was twisting the truth, weaponizing it. Another contraction hit, sharp, urgent. She pressed a hand to her belly, wincing. Adrian noticed. We need to go, he said, gripping her elbow. Hospital, now. Beckett's expression changed, subtle but sinister. Hospital? Stress-related complications, I assume. He paused, savoring every word. It'll make my petition stronger. That was the moment Lydia snapped. Enough! Her voice didn't tremble this time. You lost your company, you lost your freedom, and you will lose your right to manipulate me. Beckett's eyes darkened. We'll see. Adrian stepped between them again, opening the car door of the SUV they'd called. Lydia, get in. She hesitated, just long enough to see Beckett's face twist with something dangerous. Not anger, not fear. Calculation. He tapped the roof of his sedan. Follow them, he told his driver. Adrian's head snapped up. You're not following us anywhere, Beckett lifted his hands mockingly. "It's a free country!" The SUV door shut behind Lydia with a heavy thud, muting the city noise. Adrian climbed into the driver's seat and sped away from the curb, weaving through traffic while Lydia forced her breathing to steady. But in the side mirror, the black sedan followed. Silent. Relentless. "Adrian," she said, barely above a whisper. "He won't stop." "No," Adrian replied, eyes fixed on the road. "But neither will we." A police siren wailed somewhere behind them. The sedan inched closer, and for the first time, Lydia realized this wasn't just about custody. It wasn't about humiliation or revenge. Beckett Harrington was desperate. Desperate men were dangerous. And tonight, he would cross a line he could never return from. The SUV sped through Midtown, headlights slicing through the cold evening haze. Adrian kept one hand firmly on the wheel, the other hovering near the console as if ready to shield Lydia at any moment. Behind them, the black sedan followed with predatory precision. Never too close, never too far. Like a shadow Beckett refused to let die. Lydia pressed her back into the seat, breathing through the tightening pressure in her abdomen. "Adrian, the contractions are getting closer." His eyes flicked toward her, worry tightening his jaw. "We're 10 minutes from the hospital. Just hold on." But she wasn't worried about the contractions. She was worried about Beckett. His desperation had crossed into something unhinged. The way he stared at her from the sedan window, possessive, enraged, hungry for control, made her skin crawl. Suddenly, the traffic ahead slowed. Cars honked. Brake lights flared. Adrian cursed under his breath. "A lane closure? At this hour?" The SUV crawled forward, boxed in by cars on every side. The black sedan behind them pulled closer. Too close. Lydia's heartbeat thudded painfully. "He's going to try something." "Not while I'm here," Adrian said, though his voice carried tension he couldn't hide. The sedan crept forward until its bumper nearly touched theirs. Then, a door opened. Beckett stepped out, not running, not shouting, just walking with slow, deliberate steps toward the SUV as though the busy street belonged to him. Adrian unfastened his seatbelt. "Stay here." "No, Adrian, don't get out," Lydia pleaded, grabbing his arm. But he had already opened his door. He met Beckett between the lanes, cars honking around them, drivers yelling out windows. Adrian blocked Beckett's path, voice low and controlled. "You're done intimidating her. Leave before the police get here." Beckett smirked. "You think I care about police right now?" "You should," Adrian shot back. "Federal charges aren't going away." For the first time, Beckett's composure cracked. "That woman, your little hero, she stole everything from me. My company, my home, my future." Adrian stepped closer. "She didn't steal anything. You threw it away." Beckett lunged. Adrian dodged, shoving him back, but the sudden motion sent Lydia into another intense contraction. She cried out, pressing both hands to her stomach. Beckett heard it. He turned sharply toward the SUV, eyes wild. "That's my child!" he snarled, trying to rush past Adrian. "She's not taking him from me!" Adrian grabbed him, but Beckett twisted free, stumbling toward the passenger door. Lydia's pulse skyrocketed as she locked the door with shaking fingers. "Lydia, open it!" Beckett slammed his palm against the window. "You are not leaving with my son!" Before he could strike again. A blinding flash of red and blue lights filled the street. 2 patrol cars skidded to a stop. Officers jumped out, hands on holsters. "Sir!" "Step away from the vehicle." For a moment, Beckett froze, trapped between fury and fear. His breathing heaved, his hands shook, his pupils narrowed like an animal cornered. Then he did the one thing that sealed his fate. He reached for Lydia's door again. Officers swarmed him instantly, dragging him back, forcing him to the ground as he shouted her name, fighting restraint. Lydia watched in stunned silence, tears finally spilling. not from fear, but from the crushing weight of everything collapsing at once. Adrian rushed back into the SUV. "Lydia, look at me. You're safe. You're safe now." But she shook her head weakly. "Adrian, the baby, something's wrong." The officers' radios crackled, and Adrian stepped on the gas, because this night wasn't finished testing her yet, not even close. The wail of sirens trailed behind them as Adrian's SUV sped through the Manhattan streets, weaving between late-night taxis and startled pedestrians. Lydia clutched her belly, breathing in short, painful bursts, her vision blurred. The city lights smeared into streaks of gold and blue, and every bump in the road sent a jolt of fear through her body. "Adrian, something's wrong," she gasped. "This doesn't feel normal." Adrian glanced at her, panic flickering through his steady expression. "Stay with me. We're minutes away from Mount Sinai." But minutes felt like miles. Another contraction tore through her, sharper than the rest, forcing a cry from her throat. She doubled over, tears spilling, her fingers gripping the seat until her knuckles whitened. "I can't. Adrian, I can't breathe." "You're going to be okay," he said, voice cracking despite his effort to stay calm. "Just focus on me. In and out. Slow." His phone rang. "Elias." Adrian put him on speaker. "Elias, she's contracting hard. Beckett escalated things. Police detained him. We're heading to the hospital now." Elias's voice rushed through the car, thick with fear. "I'm on my way. Tell Lydia I'm coming. Just get her there safely." Another contraction seized her, stronger this time, radiating down her spine. Lydia's head fell back against the seat. "Adrian! What if the stress hurt the baby? What if—" "Don't go there," Adrian said firmly. "This baby has your strength. He's holding on." But Lydia's body trembled. Her breaths came out in gasps. The world dimmed at the edges. For months she had survived humiliation, manipulation, betrayal. And now, when freedom was finally within reach, her body threatened to collapse beneath the pressure. Adrian slammed the horn, swerving around a delivery truck blocking the lane. "Move! Move!" he shouted, his voice raw. Traffic opened just enough for him to surge forward. Lydia whispered, "I'm scared." He reached over, squeezed her hand tightly. "I know, but you're not alone. Not ever again." As they approached the hospital, the SUV screeched into the emergency bay. Nurses rushed out before the car even stopped moving. Adrian jumped out and swung open her door, his hands shaking as he gestured frantically. "She's 32 weeks. Trauma, contractions every 2 minutes. She needs help now." The nurses lifted Lydia into a wheelchair. She tried to speak, but another contraction tore through her body like lightning. She cried out, gripping the rails until her hands shook violently. "Ma'am." "Stay with us," a nurse urged. "Deep breaths. You're safe now." Safe. The word echoed painfully in her mind. Because even now, even with Beckett restrained miles away, he still felt like a shadow clawing for the last piece of her life. As the doors swung open and they rushed her into the bright, sterile hallway, Lydia turned her head. Adrian stood just outside, chest heaving, eyes locked on her. "I'll be right here," he whispered. Then the doors closed. Lydia's world narrowed to fluorescent lights, masked faces, and the sound of her own heartbeat racing against time. And in that terrifying moment she realized, surviving Beckett was one battle. Bringing her child safely into the world would be another. The fluorescent lights in the labor and delivery ward glared down like a gallery of unblinking eyes. Nurses surrounded Lydia, adjusting monitors, inserting IV lines, calling out numbers she was too dazed to understand. Her hospital gown clung to her skin, and every breath felt like lifting a mountain. Blood pressure dropping, contractions intensifying. "She's losing fluid. Get obstetrics in here now." The room spun. Lydia clutched the rails, teeth chattering, her mind flickering between panic and determination. "Stay with me," she told herself. "Stay with him. Stay with your baby." A doctor rushed in. a woman with steady hands and an even steadier voice. Lydia, I'm Dr. Patel. You're experiencing preterm labor. We're going to do everything we can to stabilize you and your baby. Lydia nodded weakly. Is he okay? We're monitoring him closely, but right now you need to focus on breathing. Stress is the trigger. Your body's been pushed too far. Beckett. The sedan, the shouting, the fear. It all collided inside her chest, suffocating her. The doors burst open again. Elias. Out of breath, face pale, panic etched across every line. Lyd! He rushed to her side, gripping her hand. I'm here. I'm here. A sob escaped her lips. Elias. The baby. I can't lose him. You won't, he said fiercely. You fought a billionaire, you survived hell. This is one more storm, just one more. But Lydia wasn't convinced. Her heart hammered, her breaths grew shallow. Dr. Patel exchanged a concerned look with a nurse. Her pulse is too fast. Give her oxygen. A mask lowered toward Lydia's face. Before it touched her, the door cracked open a third time. Adrian. He froze when he saw her, the wires, the monitors, the fear. His voice dropped to a whisper. Oh, God. Lydia. Dr. Patel stepped forward. Only one support person can stay. Lydia reached out blindly, fingers brushing Adrian's sleeve. Please, let him stay, she whispered. Elias stepped back immediately. Adrian, take my place. Adrian moved to her side, gently brushing a damp strand of hair from her forehead. I'm right here. Look at me. Her vision swam, but she focused on him, those steady, grounding eyes. You're safe, he whispered. You're not alone. Not anymore. A sudden beep pierced the room. Fetal heart rate dropping, a nurse called out. Dr. Patel's tone shifted. Calm, but urgent. We may need to prep for an emergency C-section. Fear slammed through Lydia like a tidal wave. No, please, he's too early. Lydia, Dr. Patel said firmly, if we don't intervene soon, both of you are at risk. The room blurred again. Lydia clutched Adrian's hand, tears streaming. I'm not ready, she choked. Everything's falling apart. No, Adrian said, leaning closer. Everything is finally coming together. You're about to meet your son, and we're going to bring him into this world safely. I promise. For the first time since the contractions started, Lydia believed him. Dr. Patel gave one final order. Prep the OR. Nurses moved quickly. The bed rolled forward. Adrian squeezed her hand, and Lydia whispered, Don't let me go. He didn't, and in that moment, the truth became undeniable. Lydia wasn't fighting alone anymore. The operating room glowed with sterile white light, humming with urgency. Lydia lay beneath the surgical drapes, her body trembling, her breaths uneven as machines beeped a tense rhythm beside her. Nurses moved in swift synchronization, adjusting monitors, prepping instruments, attaching sensors to her chest. Everything felt distant, echoed, like she was floating just outside her own body. Adrian stood at her head, dressed in surgical scrubs, his hands gently cupping hers. I'm right here, he whispered again, anchoring her to the moment. Dr. Patel appeared above the drape. Lydia, we're going to begin the incision. You'll feel pressure, not pain. Just focus on breathing. Pressure. The word echoed through the cold room. Not just the pressure on her abdomen, but the pressure of an entire life that had pushed her, cornered her, nearly broken her. The pressure to be the perfect wife, the perfect shield, the perfect silent sufferer. Tonight, that version of her was dying. Another contraction hit just as the scalpel touched her skin. Her hands tightened around Adrian's. A cry slipped from her lips. You're doing amazing, he murmured. Stay with me. The tension in the room thickened. Heart rate dropping, fetal oxygen decreasing. Let's move faster. Clamp ready. Dr. Patel's voice remained calm, but her eyes sharpened with concern. "We need to extract the baby now." Lydia's breath hitched. "Please, save him. Whatever you do, save him." Adrian bent closer, his forehead brushing hers. "He's going to make it. You fought for him every step of the way." A sudden wave of pain, not sharp but deep, pulsed through her as the surgical team worked. She heard noises, metal clinking, suction buzzing, hurried commands. She felt her body shift, pulled, guided. Then, a silence. Heavy, terrifying, absolute. Dr. Patel's voice cut through it. "All right, almost there. Hold the retractor. Just a little more." Another long second passed. Then a cry. Thin. Weak, but a cry. Lydia's heart soared and broke at the same time. Tears streamed down her temples. "That's your son," Adrian whispered, voice shaking. She tried to lift her head, desperate to see him. But before she could, Dr. Patel stepped away with the newborn cradled in her arms. "He's early," the doctor said gently. "He needs immediate respiratory support." They carried him to the NICU team waiting by the wall. Lydia caught only a glimpse. Tiny limbs, trembling chest, skin flushed a fragile pink. "My baby," she whispered, reaching out, fingers trembling. "We're taking him to the neonatal unit," a nurse said. "He's fighting, but he needs help." A sob tore from Lydia's chest, not from weakness, but from a love so fierce it shook the room. Dr. Patel turned to Adrian. "Stay with her. She's stable, but exhausted." As the NICU doors swung open, carrying her son away, Lydia felt something inside her shift. Not fear, not despair. Something stronger. Resolve. She looked up at Adrian, eyes blazing through tears. "He survived," she whispered. "We both did." And with that truth, Lydia Monroe Harrington, wounded, stitched, exhausted, finally stepped across the line between who she had been and who she was now becoming. The world returned slowly, like a fading storm, peeling back its final clouds. Hours had passed since Lydia was wheeled out of the operating room, stitched, stabilized, and transferred to a dim recovery suite overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Snow flurries drifted past the window, catching the glow of the city lights like scattered diamonds. But she barely saw any of it. Her first thought, her only thought, was her son. A faint knock sounded, but before she could respond, Adrian stepped into the room. His hair was mussed from running his hands through it, his scrubs wrinkled, exhaustion clinging to every line of his face. Yet his eyes softened the moment they met hers. "You're awake," he whispered, relief flooding his voice. "Thank God." Lydia pushed herself up, wincing as the incision tugged. "The baby, Adrian, is he—" He hurried to her bedside, gently placing a hand on her arm. "He's holding on. The NICU team has him on oxygen support, but he's stable, stronger than they expected." Her breath trembled. A wave of emotion broke through her. Gratitude, fear, love so fierce it ached. "Can I see him?" she whispered. "Soon," Adrian said. "Dr. Patel wants you monitored a little longer. Your blood pressure dipped again." Lydia closed her eyes, trying to calm the storm still raging inside her. Every inhale carried a memory, Beckett's hands pounding the SUV window, the police lights flashing, the crushing pain tearing through her body. She had endured so much, and yet she was still here. "I thought I was going to lose him," she murmured. Adrian sat on the edge of her bed. "Lydia, listen to me. That child survived because you fought like hell. You protected him from a man who never deserved to be his father." A single tear traced down her cheek. "I'm so tired, Adrian." "I know." He brushed the tear away with his thumb, slowly, gently, reverently. "But tired doesn't mean defeated. Not you." Before she could respond, the door opened again. Elias entered, face pale but determined. He held a folder of court documents, his voice sharp with purpose. "We have a bigger problem," he said. "Beckett's attorneys filed another emergency motion. He's claiming your medical event proves you're unfit." Lydia's stomach twisted. "He's still trying to take my baby?" Elias nodded grimly. "But this time the judge wants to review things in person, tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow?" Adrian stood abruptly. "She nearly died tonight. This is insane." Elias didn't argue. "Welcome to Beckett's world." Lydia felt the fear rising again, but something else stirred beneath it. A heat, a pulse, a strength she did not yet fully understand. "He wants to paint me as unstable," she said slowly, her voice gaining steadiness. "Then tomorrow, I'll show the court exactly who he is." Adrian exchanged a look with Elias, surprised, impressed, even a little awed. Lydia lifted her chin, eyes fierce despite the exhaustion pulling at her bones. "I didn't survive tonight just to surrender tomorrow." Outside, the snow continued falling, soft, quiet, relentless, just like her. The courtroom was colder than Lydia expected, quiet, clinical, indifferent. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the polished wood and rows of empty benches. It was early morning, but exhaustion already weighed heavy in her limbs. She wore a simple blouse and loose trousers to avoid straining her incision, her steps slow but steady as Adrian and Elias flanked her like silent guardians. Every movement hurt, but giving up would hurt more. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps outside, shouting questions about Beckett, the company collapse, the NICU baby fighting for breath upstairs. Lydia ignored them all. Her baby needed her. The truth needed her. And if she had survived Beckett's madness last night, she would survive whatever he tried today. "Are you sure you're ready?" Adrian whispered as they approached the courtroom doors. "No," she admitted, "but I'm ready enough." Inside, Beckett sat at the opposing table, hair slicked back, suit immaculate, wrists still faintly marked from the handcuffs. He looked smaller somehow, deflated, yet his eyes crackled with the same venom. When he saw Lydia, he smirked. "Lydia," he drawled, "I didn't expect you to be upright." Elias bristled. Adrian nearly stepped forward, but Lydia answered first. "Funny," she said. "I didn't expect you to be out of jail." His smile faltered. The judge entered, stern and weary. "We are here to consider Mr. Harrington's motion for temporary custody, citing the mother's alleged instability." Beckett rose smoothly, playing the victim with practiced ease. "Your Honor, my wife has displayed erratic behavior for months. She fled social events, refused medical guidance, formed inappropriate attachments." "Inappropriate?" Lydia snapped, unable to hold back. "You mean survival? I formed a survival plan." Beckett ignored her. "And last night she required emergency surgery due to emotional stress. I am simply trying to ensure the safety of my son." Gasps whispered across the courtroom. Elias stood. "Your Honor, may I respond?" "Proceed." Elias moved with the calm fury of a man who had waited months for this moment. Mr. Harrington neglected his pregnant wife, endangered her life, stalked her, and approached her vehicle in a manner that required police intervention. Emergency surgery was caused by his aggression, not her instability. Adrian stepped forward, placing a hand on the evidence folder. "Your Honor, if needed, I am prepared to testify that Mr. Harrington followed, threatened, and attempted to force contact with Lydia while she was experiencing medical distress." The judge raised a brow. "Police report?" Elias handed it over. The courtroom fell silent as the judge read it, line by line. Beckett shifted, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. Then the judge spoke. "Mr. Harrington, given the active federal investigation against you, documented harassment, and your wife's current medical condition, Your petition is denied. Beckett stiffened. The judge continued, voice firmer. Furthermore, effective immediately, you are prohibited from approaching Mrs. Harrington or the child within 500 feet until further review. Gasps echoed again. Beckett's voice cracked. You can't do this. He's my son. No, the judge replied. Right now, he is a child in critical care who needs stability, not a father who endangers him. Beckett lunged forward, but security restrained him instantly. Lydia didn't flinch. For the first time, she looked directly at the man who had tried to destroy her and felt nothing but clarity. He had lost, truly, irreversibly lost. And she had won something far more precious than revenge, her child's future. 2 weeks later, Manhattan was covered in a soft veil of winter sunlight when Lydia was finally strong enough to be wheeled into the NICU. She felt fragile but fierce, her incision healing, her strength returning one breath at a time. The sterile hallway smelled of sanitizer and lavender diffusers, a strange mixture of fear and hope. Adrian walked beside her, and Elias followed right behind, holding a small gift bag filled with newborn clothes. Every step down that hallway felt like a victory march after a war she never asked to fight. A nurse opened the glass door to the unit. Mrs. Harrington, he's ready for you. Her heart fluttered. There he was, tiny, perfect, hooked up to monitors, his chest rising with determined little breaths. A knitted blue cap covered his head, and the softest blanket wrapped him like a fragile miracle. Lydia felt her entire world shift. My baby, she whispered. The nurse gently lifted the infant and placed him into Lydia's trembling arms. The moment their skin touched, he opened his eyes, small, sleepy, fighting, but alive. Alive because she fought for him. Alive because she refused to give up. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Hi, sweetheart. I'm your mom, and you're safe now. I promise. Adrian stepped closer, his voice warm. He looks like you. Elias elbowed him lightly. Thank God. One Beckett in this world was enough. Lydia laughed weakly, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in months. For the first time, the pain, the trauma, the fear began to loosen their hold. Over the next few days, her son grew stronger. NICU tubes came off one by one. Lydia held him during feeding times, humming soft lullabies. Adrian came daily, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with flowers, always with quiet support. He never pushed, never assumed. He simply showed up. And Lydia realized she'd forgotten what it felt like to be cared for without conditions. On the day the baby was cleared to leave the NICU, hospital staff gathered to celebrate his progress. Snow fell softly outside as Lydia carried him to the discharge lounge, wrapped in a cozy white blanket Elias had bought. Adrian paused beside her. You know, you did this. Lydia shook her head. We did this. No, Adrian said, stepping closer, his voice steady but emotional. Lydia, you are the strongest person I've ever known. You walked through hell, and somehow you're still gentle, still kind, still standing. Her breath caught. He hesitated, then added, and when you're ready, I'd like to be part of your new beginning, not to replace anything, just to walk beside you. Her heart warmed, not from urgency, but from peace. She looked down at her son, then up at Adrian. Maybe, she whispered, this time I get to choose a life that loves me back. Outside, cameras flashed, not the cruel kind from months before, but reporters documenting the woman who defeated a billionaire and protected her child. Lydia stepped out into the snow, her son in her arms, Adrian at her side, Elias behind her like a loyal shield. The city glowed around them. Her new chapter had begun. Lydia Monroe Harrington had not just survived. She had won, completely, irrevocably and on her own terms. And just like that, our story comes to an end. But hey, my wonderful friends, you're still here with me, aren't you? If you're hearing these words, it means something in Lydia's journey touched your heart in a real, personal way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength. Maybe it whispered a truth you'd forgotten. Or maybe it simply let you breathe a little deeper tonight. You know, the Stoics used to say, the obstacle is the way, and Lydia lived that. Every setback, every heartbreak, every moment she thought she was breaking was actually shaping her into someone stronger, clearer, freer. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And that is healing. That is liberation. That is the moment you choose yourself again. So if you're facing your own storms, remember, you are not defined by what tried to destroy you, but by what you choose to rise from. If this story moved you, even just a little, let us know. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who might need the reminder, and subscribe so we can keep walking through these stories together. You matter, and your next chapter is waiting.